Alrighty. Well, thank you all for joining me today. Today we're going over Dr. Lewis's 8 R's of gut and whole body health, and we are focusing on step number 6 on speed digestion. So just as a recap here of steps 1 through 5, really laying down the foundation of your health, your gut health is super important. About 90% of inflammation is rooted in gut health, so thinking about chronic diseases and such that can actually be generated through a problematic gut. So step 1, we had talked about removing offending foods. So that's, for some people that's gluten, soy, anything that causes an irritant. There is a complete food sensitivity test. I can always provide that link to you if you are interested. It's about $45 or so, but it does give you a lot of good information on what your body likes and does not like. And then number 2 is reducing pathogens and biofilms. Remember that biofilms is where the bacteria houses itself. So thinking about oral health definitely to start with, as we talked about coconut oil pooling and salt water rinsing to really bust through those biofilms. We talked about supporting the gut microbiome and digestion with fermented foods, apple cider vinegar, really boosting that gut ecology, adding in beneficial organisms with probiotics, and then of course adding in fiber and that grit, which is the fulvic minerals. So as always, trying to make this curated, short and sweet, we are going to talk about the speed digestion. So that means, what is the transit time from what we eat, the meal that we eat, until we have a bowel movement. So what can affect that can be, different types of foods. Are we able to digest them? Hydration, physical activity, stress levels, different types of gut inflammation, especially maybe if you have like IBS or Crohn's. We've got, I think, different medications can also hinder our speed of digestion too. I know sometimes for some people who take maybe metformin, that kind of disrupts, and a lot of foods just kind of seem like they go right through. And then you've got different medications, like sometimes antibiotics and pain meds. They can kind of bound you up. So if you're having a problem, whether you feel like you're going too frequently or not enough, and we'll discuss what that looks like here in a moment, please feel free to reach out to me so that way we can kind of see what's going on and get you on a good digestion speed. So when we're thinking about our digestion speed, we don't want to be super fast. We don't want to be super slow. We want to be right in the middle, okay? So we're going to be going over the top 3 ways to really, kickstart your digestion, especially maybe if it's a little on the sluggish side. So to go through to really understand, there is a process that goes through, your whole digestive. It's not just we eat it, hits the stomach, and then, we have a bowel movement. However, there is, when we think about the signals of the body and where we start to work on our digestion, actually, we say digestion starts in the mouth, but also we have to have those hunger hormones and those cues, right? So the brain, all right, is going to send out those hunger cues. We're going to start salivating maybe in the mouth if we're seeing something very tasty, say a sizzling steak. And that's going to start the mechanical process when we chew the food. It needs to go into a bolus is what it's called. So think about like chewing it up like baby food. And then it needs to go through the esophagus, hit the stomach where it's made into chyme. So it's got to liquefy no matter what it is that we eat. That's why it's super important to chew properly. So that way it helps the stomach to be able to break that down. Goes into the small intestines, the large intestines, and then finally the rectum, right? So when we're thinking about, how long should that take, quite honestly, a lot more of Americans more constipated. So their transit time is like the average when I was looking up different times, like 40 to 72 hours, which is a long time. That means you're going like every other day with a bowel movement. And when we think about what happens when that stool sits there is that we are going to be, reabsorbing toxins. That's the whole purpose of having a bowel movement, right? Is to, that's one of our pathways to excrete out waste, those toxins. It's also going to drain our metabolism, our energy levels, and then, chronic GI or other illnesses that can, stem from there. So we want to, a healthy digestion time is more of that 12 to 18 hours. All right, so going, once to 2 times a day. I know with Dr. Lewis, going once a day is really good. That's optimal. Now, if we're going, more than that, like less than 10 hours, we've got malabsorption, malnutrients. It's the body's not taking the time to be able to break everything down for you to absorb all those nutrients, and so those can lead to those issues there. Now, how do you know your digestive transit time? I mean, you eat, we go to the bathroom, seems like we go maybe every day, or maybe it is every other day, but what you eat for that first meal of the day, by the time that you go to the bathroom, how long is that actually taking? Is what you're eating, say, on day 1, excreting out on day 3? Does that make sense? Okay, so there is a transit test that you can do. One, yes, you can go to your doctor and ask for one. I believe like they give you a capsule to swallow, and then you just look for, what number of days until you see that capsule, I believe, in your feces. Now, you can also do this at home with beets. I don't know if you all have eaten beets before or like beets, but as we know, when we are finished with the beets and we have our bowel movement, it colors our poop, right? So this is an easy one to kind of see how long it takes before it's actually through that digestive system. So you're going to establish a time, it's called day 0. So it's right after you have a typical bowel movement. You're going to eat a medium beet, okay? Eat your normal meals and everything like that too, but make sure you have a good amount of beets with your meal there. And then you're just going to wait until you see beets show up in your bowel movements. It may be later on that day, it may be the next day, or even the day after. So that way, that's going to show you, if you're really backed up, or where your transit time is maybe more in the optimal stage. So food digestion time chart is really neat to see. So, when we're thinking about, water and grapes, those digestive times are pretty quick. Now, when it comes to like beef and chicken, some people just like to eat 1 meal a day. After that 4th hour, you should start to feel a little bit hungry. It's done its part in being in the stomach to liquefy. So if you're noticing that you're eating red meat, and this goes for me especially, I definitely have to have like pickle juice, take a betaine, something, because red meat just sits heavy, and I feel like it's sitting there for longer than 4 hours. So that might be something to kind of think about, that, hey, I'm eating this chicken, this beef, and it's like I'm eating that at lunch and I don't need dinner and I'm not hungry again until breakfast. So kind of keeping that in mind. All right, so the interesting part about this is that if you do have a sluggish transit time or speed of digestion, your stools move through your intestinal tract at the pace according to your acidity level. So that's interesting, right? So we already know that stomach acid production does a lot of things for us. It sterilizes our food, it breaks down our food, but who knew that it also helps with our speed of digestion? All right, so if we have a very alkaline stomach acid, so above a 1 to 3, so say we have a 4, it's going to slow down that speed of digestion. Okay, there are other things that happen with that, that's according to your acidity level, is what's called delayed gastric emptying, which is a diagnosis that your doctor can give you if you feel like, foods just sit heavy or for like a long time. They'll say, well, you just have delayed gastric emptying. But honestly, we just don't have enough acidity in our stomachs. We need to make sure we're bringing up that stomach acid production. So that's where fermented foods and betaine come into play. We've talked about betaine before, and just as a reminder that that supplement is added to our supplement list that is free for National Salvage employees, all the locations. So if you feel like you would like to give this a try, contact me and I can get that sent out to you. All right, and another note that I did want to make is that with delayed gastric emptying, it's also called a gastroparesis. There's a lot of symptoms with that. So it's not just your normal bloating, acid reflux, and nausea, but also, high blood sugar levels. Blood sugar levels are maybe difficult to control. For some people, it's even unwanted weight loss, just because we're honestly being more like malnourished in the body. So if you have any of those symptoms there, it might also, if you'd like to shoot me a message, we can talk about that a little bit more in depth, so that way you have some information to take to your doctor. All right. So next, what can help kind of with that speed of digestion is going to be warm beverages when you eat. So it's actually not recommended. I know people ask me, Molly, hot water, cold water, doesn't really matter. And honestly, we just need to get water in. However, if you do have a sluggish digestive system, it is recommended to drink warm water. And since we are getting into those cooler months where maybe we want more hot tea and warm water with lemon, that's going to really help with your digestive system. In Japan, they have miso soup that is served with every meal. It's actually served before your meal. Okay, with miso soup, it is a fermented soybeans paste that is creates a broth. Okay, I actually made some today to share with people. So it's just water, miso paste, put a little tofu, chives, and seaweed in there. All right, and that is fabulous. Okay, it's a probiotic soup. It does help with bloating, but more importantly, with that speed of digestion. Okay, that's going to help alleviate that bloating. Also thinking about, like I mentioned, like the hot water, also not just allows for better digestion, but detoxifies your body. I kept getting, reading information about how warm water, hot water, drinking it helps relieve from nasal congestion. So I'm going to do some more research into that, but I thought that was really interesting, again, especially going into the colder months, and relieves body pain too. And the science behind that is because when we drink cold water, the body has to use a lot of energy to warm it up for the body to actually utilize properly. So those are going to be, that's a step 2 that you can take. 1, make sure that you acidify the stomach, and 2, having a hot soup beverage with your meal. And then 3 is when you're having your vegetables, have them already cooked or sautéed preferably. So when you do cook your vegetables, fiber and veggies become softer to make it easier for chewing, but also starch absorbs water, it swells, and it's easier to digest. Making sure you're not overcooking your vegetables is key. So a steam or a saute is best, because you still want to make sure that you're keeping the nutrients in. So, all right, any questions so far? I know I'm going kind of fast, but all right, perfect. So considerations by Dr. Lewis, consuming that warm beverage with meals, water, tea, broth, consuming more fermented foods, sauteing or steaming all your vegetables. He even put grinding your food in a blender or food processor. So the theory behind that is easier, especially if we don't chew well. Maybe we're have some pain, we're waiting on the dentist, we're missing some back molars, whatever it may be. If you're able to make that process easier for your stomach to liquefy your foods, the better. So thinking about making maybe a lot of soups, if you do, say, grind your own meat. I know some people even grind up like zucchini and other vegetables in as they're making their like hamburger or turkey burger patties, just to kind of, especially if they don't like vegetables, they put it in there and making your own smoothies. And then you also put in, adding the fulvic minerals. So the fulvic minerals, I know Dr. Lewis really likes to put it in his coffee because it's warm. He feels like it's going to better absorb. So that's something you can also try, is that if you do have those fulvic minerals, throw it in your coffee because it's tasteless, or in your tea or however, and consume it that way. All right, so there are some testings that you can do for micronutrients. That is one of the suggestions that Dr. Lewis does have with the 8 R's of gut and whole body health. So I did pull up one by Quest Diagnostics. So when we're thinking about, micronutrients, nutritional deficiencies contribute to chronic health conditions, which we already knew that, right? But to what extent? It could be as much as, sleep disorders. We also got to remember different pharmaceuticals that we're on. Okay, if you're on a statin medication, you're going to probably start to deplete your CoQ10, okay, micronutrient enzyme that is needed. If you are on a protein pump inhibitor like an omeprazole, Nexium, something like that, that is lowering stomach acid production in the body, we're probably going to have some low mineral concentrations in the body. So just kind of seeing where you're at is really important, especially if you're having any of these symptoms going on here. And even when you're an athletic performance, you want to be in optimal shape. All right, trying to make it short and sweet. That is what we have here on speed digestion. So you all know what your action steps are. Try and consume some warm beverages or soup with your meal and cook those vegetables. Next month, we're going to be talking about leaky gut syndrome and what that entails. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.